everyone. Welcome. It is a cold, cool day here in Raleigh. Spring will hopefully be here eventually, but it is what it is. I'm super excited today. We're going to be talking about forgiveness and using gratitude to forgive. If someone did something really horrible to you, would you be able to find gratitude in that? What would you be able to learn from that? We're going to be talking to author Lisa Osina this afternoon. In today's Reawaken You, I guess no sound effect today. I just want you to think about, there we go, a little bit delayed. Sorry, we've had technical difficulties as we were just talking earlier. Everything is in divine timing. And then that's today's thought for you. Sometimes we want everything done on our time and in our way, and life always doesn't happen like that. I would have liked to have gotten married 10 years ago. Didn't happen. But if you trust that everything is going to happen in divine timing, trust that you'll get what you need when you need it, then that can relieve a lot of anxiety and worry because you can only control the present moment. You can't control the future. If you worry about it now, it's just wasted energy. So what event this week, what can you do to let go of that control, to accept that everything is in divine timing and see if that makes you less anxious? Okay, we're going to tell you about today's guest. Lisa Osina was born in New York and immigrated in 1971 to Israel, settling on a kibbutz. In 1977, she moved to London and returned to the U.S. in 1991. Lisa published her first work, an autobiographical novel, Moving, in 2000. Moving was one of the pioneering novels to be published electronically, becoming one of the first ebooks. Lisa says life didn't really begin until 40. After many years of self-educating in the realms of spiritualism and shamanism, Lisa enrolled in a 4-year program of self-empowerment and ancient sacred teachings. She balances her professional career in public accounting and her spiritual practices with writing and creativity. Lisa lives in Northern California with her husband, 2 dogs, 2 cats, and a bull python. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Julie. Good
We're ex
day.
Yes, happy day. So the first question, we want to talk about the story, um, a wolf song. Now, the wolves are, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I call the animal guide or animal spirit. And I want to know why you picked wolves because I have a wolf
They
tattoo.
picked me.
They picked you. Okay, well,
Yeah.
so talk about that because I have a wolf tattoo on my stomach. I don't know if you've heard of a book called Women Who Run with the Wolves, which was, gosh, 25 years ago.
I
And
do. I do.
after I read that book, I had to go out and get a tattoo of a wolf howling at the moon. So that's on my stomach. So
Oh.
everyone knows I have at least one tattoo. But anyway, so when I read your book, I was super excited. But if you could first maybe explain to people what animal spirits or guides are for those who don't know and how the wolves chose you.
Okay. Well, to start with, defining an animal spirit it can be is a very personal thing. Everyone feels animal energy within them in a different way. What happened with me was, number one, I've always been extremely drawn to dogs, and connected with them very, very closely. And say around 1995 or so, I met my future husband who had a little puppy, and his name was Nano. And he was not, and slightly before that, I had been meditating, and there was a wolf that would show up in a castle in my higher self. That was the very beginnings of my meditations and my experiences with that. And one day, after I'd gone to Israel and had met Ofer and had met Nano, I meditated and my wolf was gone. And I said, "Where's my wolf?" And they said, "Right in front of you." And I looked down. Of course, Nano was sitting there asleep with me, and he wasn't a normal dog. He didn't play. He just attached himself to me. And for 8 long years, he was attached to me. um, and I didn't really understand that he was my power animal. I didn't know what to do with him. The year after he passed, I went to a Joshua Tree gathering with Lynn Andrews, and one of the first meditations she did was the power animal meditation. And Nano came back to me as my power animal. And I went crawling to Lynn in tears saying, "Can your real animal dog be your power animal?" And she said, "Of course." Well, since then, Nano has sat on my shoulder and guided me. Now, what do we say about animal power in general? Um, I feel that as humans, we need animal energy because we do not have the survival instincts that wild animals have. And I think we need them. So when you have an affinity with a certain animal, you are able to have them teach you their skills and use them in your life. For instance, the wolf is the teacher for me, and the wolf teaches me how to teach without getting in people's faces and teaching in a delicate, subtle way so that people can absorb the wisdom that comes out instead of being bombarded and asked to memorize it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you use animal energy, um, it kind of seeps into the cells instead of into the brain.
Right, which then I love that because if we use our brain or think too much, we don't get it on the spiritual or what I would
Goes
consider a
away,
deeper level.
indeed.
What,
Now,
I'm sorry, go
about a
ahead, Ed.
wolf.
What,
Well, I can leave this for the next question.
oh no, if you have something, please, I want you to finish your thought.
Okay. You had asked how the wolves found me.
Yes.
So Nano, and after that, I had a husky called Nala who was with us for 6 years, and she taught me every challenge there was. She was epileptic. She had tetanus and survived. Um, and all of the things that she went through were in the years that I was in school with Lynn. And she basically brought the lessons to me on how to, what do you say, how to heal,
Mm-hmm.
basically how to heal. Lynn, Nala had every ailment there was. And I used my healing techniques to help her survive. And Nano came into play in helping her survive as well. So there we have Nala and Nano. Next, I graduated from school. I was ordained, and I sat for a year and a half translating what I had learned into everyday English. Just, within me, not really writing and not really knowing what I was going to do with this new wisdom I had and how I was going to develop a retirement career with it. That was my purpose. On 11/11/11, we'd been guided by Lynn to work with our power animals. And as you know, 11/11/11 was a huge portal day. Portals opened and allowed a lot of people to receive a lot of information. Um, and this is all celestial portals and celestial information, of course. Um, so I decided to take the day off, and I went outside and said, okay, Nala and Nano, my power animals, let's work together. And Nala and Nano's power animal showed up, who was a big black wolf with a white stripe down his nose. And I had worked with him in the past, but very, very, not frequently at all. And he showed up and said, you'll be working with me for the next year. And I wasn't very keen on that and argued with him. And in the end, he said, shut up and listen. So I did. And he started imparting a wolf song to me.
Now, one thing,
And
go ahead.
he was dictating, literally dictating the story. And I ran inside, started typing, and he continued to impart the story to me for an entire year. I wrote the last word on 11/11/12, and on 11/11/13, a wolf song went live on Amazon.com, and we had intended it to go live on 11/29. That gives me shivers.
Wow, that's incredible. And I like knowing this background because I've read the book. I don't want to give too much away because I want to people to I just don't want to give too much away. But in the beginning, when the girls first meet Nalo and Nana, they're young. And so I think kids would be more open to meeting their power animal or their animal spirit. And so, they were obviously a little scared, but also open to that. So, talk a little bit about that because I think that that's so great that they were ultimately open to that because I think it might be more of a challenge as an adult because we get set in our ways and be like all of a sudden maybe you're meditating and this animal comes up, people might be like, whoa, what's going on?
And the fear sets in.
Yeah.
Well, um, I don't have a lot of reasons why, because I merely accepted what was
Hmm.
given to me. On 11/11, when the first vision that I saw were the two wolves in the sky, and the next thing I knew it, I was dreaming I was going through the birth canal, and these two children were being born, and all I could hear were the wolves talking amongst themselves while these two girls were being born. The energy of the children in the first few chapters, which I enjoyed so much, and as you can tell, I didn't want to separate them. um, that energy, I think, came from myself and my child energy, but also we had two children living next door. They're still next door, but they were 6 and 7 years old, and they would play outside as I would dream. And I think a lot of the energy of the child and the freeness. And this little girl, she was very, very, very free. She would just twirl in the backyard. She would sing to herself. And it would all occur within her imagination. And I think that the energy that she gave out gave me the courage to use it and to remember the fantasil energy that I had as a child and how I used to make up stories and virtually see things and tell my mother, and she would tell me, "You're imagining it." Um, Imagination in a shamanic way is something that is occurring on a different dimension. What you imagine is real. It's just not happening here. But what you imagine, you create on another dimension. So what that does is lead us, of course, into the conversation of mindfulness, which has come up very recently, has become the latest buzzword. And that is, be careful of your thoughts, be careful of your feelings and your emotions and what you project out into the world, because it is shared. At the end of the day, we are all one, and that energy is shared.
Absolutely. And I love how the girls play and are imaginative because I think that's something we've lost in our society. I think we have all, iPads and PlayStations and all that, and just instead of using our imagination, not only for kids, but for all of us, or reading or doing something that takes you there. Because I love how you talk about talk about this all the time. We create our reality. And so that playful imagination of the dreams, I do that, spend an amount of time every single day thinking about the life I want, creating the life I want. And it's something that's going to raise my vibrational level. But I think that's something we all too often forget today.
Yes, and we pray to an outside source.
Yes, yes. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's
Um,
well how when I've learned that prayer is a prayer for your own power. It's a prayer to empower yourself to create the magic, to empower yourself to be that shining light that brightens people's day. Um, I find that when I pray to an outside source, I'm left with a lot of expectation, disappointment, and then anger.
mhm.
Whereas when I pray from within, in order to empower myself, I manifest it. There's no
Yes,
expectation. There's no end result. There's divine manifestation.
absolutely. I really want to talk now about I'm trying to balance not giving it all away and talking about certain things. I have a bunch of pages turned down. We don't have time to get through every page, but one of the things that I think is so important about the book is the subject of forgiveness. And I think, that's something I have personally struggled with. I think I've been able to forgive people who've done horrible things to me, but then someone can annoy me. And I'm like, really? You're able to forgive on this deep level, then there's something trivial. So for me, it's a continual process, and hopefully one day I'll get there. But, the kids have some pretty horrific things happen to them, but the theme is forgiving and having gratitude and help with that. So talk again, whatever you're comfortable with, and through the story or your own process about
Mm-hmm.
that, because I think it's so many of us struggle with forgiveness, and I think this would be if everyone in the world were able to just take one step forward in this area, it would just be a huge, huge difference.
It would. I think it would too. I agree. Um, I I did not know that I was writing a story about forgiveness while I was writing the story. I discovered that after I reread the book when I finished it. And the other thing I discovered when I finished reading it was that I had written a metaphor of my own forgiveness. Um, and it really has to do with remote forgiveness. And it's not a matter of meeting that person at their deathbed and saying, I forgive you before you die, then go ahead and die in peace. It's more of turning around to your own deathbed and saying, I forgive, now live on. Because when we are riddled with anger and resentment and all of the emotions that come up when we need to forgive, we are virtually sitting on our own deathbed, metaphorically. And in order to give ourselves a life back, free of resentment, guilt, anger, anxiety, hatred, in order to disseminate those things from our life, I think I used the wrong word, in order to obliterate those things from our life, we have to forgive ourselves for feeling it in the first place. So when you start to think about the person who lied to you, deceived you, made you think that you were living in a world that didn't really exist because they lied to you so much, and then knocked you over in the head when you told them that they were lying, and you come back a few years later and you say, okay, now I can't trust anybody because of that person anymore. Now I can't have a relationship with anyone because I don't trust them anymore. I don't trust anyone because I was lied to. I don't get close to people physically because they might hit me. All of the different things that occur when you haven't forgiven. And you get to a point and you say, I'm not living anymore. I'm dying. So you go to your own deathbed and you say, okay, I forgive myself for going through those things. And you release yourself into a new life, into a new way of life. That was one aspect of my forgiveness. And that is the aspect of self-forgiveness for allowing yourself to go through it. But I find the first issue when it comes to forgiveness is identifying the issue you want to forgive. Because as I said before, you're so full of self-loathing for being in that situation in the first place. You really don't know what it is you need to forgive. You have a feeling you're angry at everything. So that was the first step to forgiveness, is identifying the issues. And in A Wolf Song, the girls clearly had to identify what was light and what was dark in their lives. They do go through a very, very upsetting and traumatic tragedy when they're 10 years old, both of them on the same day. Different things happen to them. And at the end of the day, when you look back and finish the book, you say, well, you know what? They had it pretty good. Hannah she's taken by a caregiver who teaches her how to live. And then Margaret continues to live her nightmare for the next 6 or 7 years. Once the two of them are reunited at age 20, that's when the real discussions begin. And I really, really enjoyed taking them to another country and giving a different culture as a background, because it had added another level that enabled me to take them into different lifetimes and discuss past life regression at the same time.
Yes, and you did that very well. I just think that whole entire segment of you talking about forgiveness is extremely powerful because you told more than I would have given away. So I feel more comfortable with you giving away plot points and whatever you feel is good. But they both.
Yeah, I have been giving away quite a bit, Julie, because this isn't a suspense novel. This is a novel to learn. So I think even if you give away the whole story, people are going to read it and enjoy it because they want to go through the experience themselves and they want to learn how a person did that. And I can tell the detail of every single part of the story. They're still going to want to read it because of the energy that it projects. That's kind of my feeling.
Hey, that's great. I just didn't want you to be like, "Oh my gosh, you revealed that."
Stop,
But
stop, stop.
but what I loved about it is I don't think there's one person on this planet who, to some extent, doesn't experience a situation like either of these twos, not as bad or even worse, but all of us have some type of trauma that we have experienced and we need to be able to forgive. So I think that's something that's really was really valuable about it because we can all read this book and learn from it.
And
Now I
the
want
wolves made me, every single chapter has a lesson. Um, and the lessons are highlighted in the verses of the song. I
yes.
kind of feel like, they'll dream and dream and dream, and they go in and out of different lifelines and different dimensions. And 1 minute they're in reality, and the next minute they're in the dream time. But then the verse wraps up the chapter and brings the teaching. How did you feel, Julie? Did you feel the teaching coming through the verses?
I did, but I don't know until you articulated that if I would have said that. My process is I read in the bathtub most of the time. That's my kind of my woman cave, and in a novel that I need to absorb, I usually do it a chapter at a time when I'm relaxed in a bubble bath. And so the lessons definitely came through, but now I'm gonna have to reread it because that wouldn't, I don't know. I hearing you say that it makes sense, but I don't know if I could have articulated that. But I wanted to ask you about there's a point when they leave Margaret where she is, and Trudy and Hannah don't, lack of a better word, save her, and she is in the mental health facility. So that was hard.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that because again, she's in those teenage years, a young child, teenage, that so still somewhat young, and that would be a hard thing to comprehend. But there's the bigger meaning there about sometimes we're like, oh, we got to save, we got to do, but we don't. So talk about that.
Well, yes, it is. It really is a matter of not interfering with other people's karma and other people's lifeline because of your own needs. Margaret had to go through what she went through. Had she not gone through what she went through, she would have tried to copy Hannah the rest of her life. That's what I feel.
Mm-hmm.
She needed that huge par of time between them in order for her to create her own path. And as you see at the end, she goes into sound healing, and that becomes her path. Um, there's the logistical side of it. They hadn't hit 20. They were still, that was, I think that's, it was the epilogue, wasn't it?
I believe so.
That chapter. That's a chapter that kind of is out of time and space. It's
Yes.
in between the two. It's their cheating time. Um, it was very important that I write that chapter in order to prepare the readers for what was coming. And it was also important to me to set the pace, set the scene for where Jay was. And nobody really, really, really gets to see Jay's psychosis. And I think they get to see that through Margaret.
Yes. Yes.
Because at the end of the day, Jay is disturbed, psychotic, but you only see that in the very beginning of the story and in the 5 lines that describe what happened.
Right.
The insanity really, really needed to be instilled in order for people to feel it, to feel that kind of insanity, to hear her letter, to see how Hannah tried to do it the wrong way, the wronger way, and then to approach her the right way.
Right.
Hannah tried all kinds of ways, and Trudy knocked it down and just said, try again, try again. But when she did come up with something and a communication to Margaret, it was from her heart, and it was divine. She let the wolves talk through her. And I think it's even more interesting how Margaret brings that up later on.
Yep. Do
A
you want to
couple
address?
chapters later, when she says, it was only when I got that letter from you that I realized that you guys were real. She'd gotten to the point that she thought Hannah and Trudy were part of her fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't even realize they were real anymore. She really lost touch with what was real and what wasn't. And I wanted to show the difference between a stable shamanic upbringing and an unstable shamanic upbringing. And I think
Ah.
it's very, very important for parents like us that we're shamans and we practice it, to bring these teachings to children in the way, you really have to be careful, because the children go out and they take you literally, and they will create another world for themselves if you don't make sure they're doing it in the right way, in a safe way. It's not play. And I think that's one thing that I wanted to emphasize there. This isn't play. This is sacred practice.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And wow, aha moment for me. So thank you for that. But that's when you're saying that, I'm like, wow, that's so true. And, I can think of examples in my life of adults that I know who, even if it wasn't a shamanic practice, who have learned things that have affected them in a poor manner, even though it's spiritual. Because just something, because it's spiritual doesn't make it right or doesn't mean that it can be harmful.
Yeah, I was listening to a program a few days ago, and they were talking about these are very experienced light workers who work on our luminous fibers on a daily basis. And they're just like you have the monks in Tibet that work on the world. Well, there are shamans that are working on the ley lines of our earth and working, in different ways around us. And when they'll go and work somewhere, they don't stay there. They leave when they're finished working. Um, there's a lot of things going on out there. There's a lot of energies out there that that they're not for humans. We're not supposed to be there.
Hmm.
So when we go and practice and we're working in the dream time, we go, we do our work, and we leave. We don't stick around.
Yeah.
And we
Good.
smudge ourselves and we protect ourselves. It's not a playground. And the thing is that so many women and men in their adolescent years and in their mid-teen years become very attracted to pagan practices and um, what are they called?
Hmm.
Seances and Ouija boards and all the things that we kind of got into as teenagers, and the heavy breathing and how to bring yourself to a different level with the heavy breathing. And I remember all these games we played as teenagers, and they were games. We didn't realize what we were doing.
Hmm.
It's not a game.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I think that that's really important. I'm curious. I know that the Nalo and Nala guided you. Nala, did I say that right? Guided you, but I love Trudy. I just loved her spirit and her energy, and I'm curious, did you base her on anyone, or she just was kind of this, like I just wanted to hug her, like this magical woman, and I just had wondered about that.
Well, Julie, I didn't base the characters on anyone. I didn't know them. When they appeared, I was equally surprised as you. When they developed, I was even more surprised and very, very proud that I was able to stay out of my own way and let them come through. I didn't know what the end of the sentence that I began would be, let alone the end of the paragraph or the chapter. So I know a lot of us like to say, okay, I base this on that. And on some of my other books, yes, characters were based on certain entities and certain people. On this book, um, I would say she's probably a metaphor for the Sisterhood of the Shields,
Uh,
if anything. She's a metaphor for that whole group, circle of sisters that guide Lynn.
gotcha. Okay.
And are you familiar with the Sister of the Shields? Have you read Lynn's books?
I haven't actually. I interviewed Lynn a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
Yes. So
there you go.
yeah. Okay. I should have
And I
recognized
have an
that. Yeah.
inkling, and I have a suspicion, and I really do want to speak to Lynn because we haven't had an opportunity to talk about this. She has read the book. She knows she's in it. She has endorsed it. And the question I want to ask her is, Lynn, who is Trudy?
Ah.
Is she one of the sisterhood that you've never told us about? There's 44 of them.
Oh,
We haven't
right.
met them all. I don't know. And I will have that conversation with Lynn in 2 weeks. We're both going to be at the New Living Expo in San Mateo, California. She'll be doing a workshop on Friday, and I'll be doing a lecture about the wolf song on Saturday night. And she's going to have a stall there all weekend. So I will have an opportunity to sit down with her, and I'm going to talk to her about Trudy because I really want to know.
Well,
I
let
think
don't
she, I
hide it.
think
Let me
she,
know what you find out.
I think she may well be either a metaphor for the entire circle or one of the sisterhood that has just kind of slipped into my story.
Okay, that makes perfect sense that you said that. Another
Because I don't know anyone like that except for the sisterhood.
okay. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean she was just her whole like being there and not being there and slipping in and
Oh,
out and then let's talk
showing
about
up,
go ahead. Showing
showing
up.
up on her front yard, on the front yard,
Right, right, all of
like
that.
Santa
Very
Claus.
very magical. Now, I'm curious, why did you include, or if there was, you said at the beginning you want to bring in past life regression and your shamanism, but I love the part, And when they went to the castle and got dressed up, I wanted a visual for that. I wanted to see the girls in their dresses when I read that. I'm like, oh, I just want to see it and touch it. But anything to kind of bring that. I mean, I love that the fact that traveled in time. But talk a little bit about that.
Well, did you see the illustration? How did you enjoy the illustration?
Oh, you know what? I for you had a couple. Oh, wait. See, I'm
The
sorry.
painting party.
That's right. I forget. I don't like being old. Yes. But you know what? I wanted a close up of the dresses. Yes, I'm on that page. But see, I wanted a just because it's how my mind works. I wanted a color, close up of the dresses. I wanted to see the shoes. I wanted the girly stuff.
Did you see them though? Did you? Did you
Yes.
see them in your
Yes.
mind's eye? Were you able to
Yes.
feel those dresses?
I was. But
Oh,
you know what? I could, but again, I'm so like, oh, I just wanted to. I just thought it sounded so beautiful, and I just love that and bringing that old time in, and I like that.
well, it was totally spontaneous. It was not planned. I will say one thing. I have been to that castle,
Ah,
and I remember that castle for a few years. I don't know what's going on with it right now, but it became a nightclub,
ah,
and we would go there on Friday nights. And I remember being there and feeling other lifetimes going on, feeling awkward doing modern things there, and feeling other lifetimes there. And that was, God knows, that was 1995 or 1994 when I was there. And I remember that feeling to today. And I know that that is what brought me into the dual lifetime. But you see, Rupert was not was it Rupert or Aaron?
for which part? Because there was
Um,
Rupert,
Rupert, no, Rupert is Margaret. Margaret meets Rupert, and
right?
Trudy's soulmate,
Oh, right.
Aaron.
Yes,
He shows up before the castle.
yes.
He shows up in the fish and chip shop, and I remember writing about the fish and chip shop, and I'm sitting, because when I'm writing, I'm there. It's literally I'm in that dream, and it's happening, and that's how spontaneous, real time things happen as I write. And I remember she was talking to the girls, and there was this guy in the back of my, and I kept saying, "Go away, go away." And he was like, "No, I'm here and I need to talk to Trudy." And I was like, "Okay, well, talk to her then, wherever you are." So I kind of found out who he was as he appeared. He was there on my shoulder bugging me. I'm here. I'm supposed to be in this book, and, get me in the story, please. So that was how that happened. And then all the lifetimes, and of course, I thought they were going to go into this massive dance, minuet dance from Romeo and Juliet, and it would be this beautiful, Renaissance thing. And the next thing I know it, they're at this painting party, and I'm like, what? And they're all painting. And that comes from creativity. That comes from showing how creativity is divine and how it's a divine practice. That is the meaning of that. I didn't know before I wrote it, but on reflection, that's what that is.
Talk a little bit about because Aaron and Trudy are soulmates, but they're not together. And I think in our culture, they'd be like, "What? What do you mean they're not together? They're soulmates. They're supposed to be together." Talk a little bit about that.
Well, we're not always supposed to be together in every lifetime. Soulmates, are they know each other in each lifetime, but it doesn't mean they're going to be together. I find that when I look into my past lives and my future lives, I see the same characters, but they always switch roles. That's what I'm always finding. And that's kind of where that was going. Whereas, you'll be a friend in this lifetime, you'll be a husband in that lifetime, and you'll be an enemy in the next lifetime because we're here to learn about enemies. It really depends on what you're on earth to learn in that lifetime.
Hmm.
And the most important lesson from the whole thing was Aaron releasing her. Releasing her from being bound to someone that loved her and feeling guilty about it because she knew that they couldn't be together that lifetime. And he
Right.
released her. That was a very powerful thing for me. And I don't know where it came from, and I can't connect it to anything personal. But it did free me as I wrote it. There
Yeah.
was a liberation of such. So there may be some karmic energy that I was releasing. I don't even need to know what it is.
Right. Now, you brought up enemies. I wanted to talk a little bit about there when Margaret is giving the sound healing concert. And so, there were some not so nice entities there. So, they had to protect her. Talk a little bit about that scene and maybe the importance of that, because I would have never, until you thought about it, thought that anyone like my husband could be my enemy in my next life. That would have never entered into my thinking. So let's talk a little bit about that scene and what that's about. And I love that she was a sound healer, by the way, because I have experienced sound healing and find it amazing and powerful. And we need to have more sound healers out there.
Yes. Um, Julie, can you repeat the beginning of the question?
Sure. So in the scene where she's at the concert hall and to
Oh,
do her
okay.
sound
Okay.
healing, and that there are some enemies, I don't know if I want to use that word, people who aren't there to support her and
Do
they
you,
have to protect her. Some powerful negative energies going on. So talk a little bit about that and the
okay.
purpose of that, or whatever you think's of value to everyone that you'd like to share.
Um, what she was seeing was Nala's, it was Nala's battle that she was watching. Now, of course, Nala was part of Margaret. The two of them, they're intertwined, and they were also very separate. A lot of the point of a wolf song is that not all spirits and not all spirits that join you are necessarily balanced. Um, we're all here to learn something, and Nala was not a balanced spirit from the get-go. She had identity problems at the very beginning. Remember, she wouldn't give Margaret the
Yes.
words.
Mm-hmm.
She kept, and a lot of that had to do with Margaret going crazy because Nala was feeding her a lot of crazy.
Yeah.
Now, Margaret went off and did sound healing, and she was basically living her life without Nala. And Nala got extremely lazy because she wasn't using her. Now, when people get lazy, your energy level goes down and it creates a shadow within you. And what we were seeing was Nala's shadow. We were seeing it in many stages, literally from the asp and then moving into the girl. I mean, it was an asp at the beginning of the book
Mm-hmm.
that she shows up and Nano goes and buries her, remember?
Oh, yeah.
And gets rid, and that was Nano's mistake. Nano buried her instead of resolving it. Well, she came back up that dark side and manifested herself as the girl that was trying to woo Margaret to start with. Remember the pretty girl that shows up that
Yes.
had been there the day before, and she was like, "Look, I met this
Yeah.
woman. Come and meet her." And she shows up during the during her presentation. So first Nala shows up as this woman that Margaret trusted, Then she shows up as the old man. Then Nano identifies and figures out that, oh my God, this is Nala. I've got to get into action here. And that's when the Phoenix has to come and transform the energy totally.
Hmm.
Now, the significance of the Phoenix and finding out whose power animal that really is kind of brings the book full circle. Because who destroys their lives and who brings them back together? And I
Yeah.
won't say who.
Oh, yay, you're not giving something away. Good job.
I'm not going to give that one away. But you can tie together, there's destruction, and then there's bringing it together. And it is the same entity
Hmm.
in a different form.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk, you mentioned something I'd like you to talk about, because this was
Mm-hmm.
another theme that was great about when she buries the dark side, because we all have that, and that's, I think, our natural tendency to do. Oh my gosh, I can't look at it. That'd make me bad. Talk a little bit more about that.
And then we try and suppress it and suppress it and
Yes,
suppress it, and we wonder why we walk into judgment on everything that happens to us.
right.
Judgment is a symptom of the suppression of bad things happening to us. When we're asked to make a decision or state our opinion about something, what we do is we involve every emotional wound that ever occurred in us. And then we make a decision. Um, so when Nano does was what he thinks he's supposed to do and buries the asp and buries Nano's dark side, he doesn't even realize that he needs to dissolve it and not bury it. It's only later on that they all know what to do with it in order to heal Nala, who's deeply wounded as
Yes,
well.
yes.
But I do think a lot of that has to do with the lesson of the difference between judgment and discernment. We think that judgment is a valid thing in our lifetime because we equate it to Judge Judy or, justice, or our court system. And judgment is a very, very emotional action. You cannot judge unless you've involved your emotions. And the minute you do that, the objectivity disappears. So at the end of the day, it's not a fair judgment.
Hmm.
Have I just confused everyone totally?
No, I don't think you did. It's one of those things, like, I have thankful that I record all these shows so I can go back and listen, because sometimes it's something like that. I have to think a little bit about it, roll it around, and before I can completely digest it and fully understand it.
Let me make an example. We meet a new person, it's a new colleague at work. 3 months into the time they're at work, you've had various interactions with that person and you don't know them. They're strangers, really. Yet, so many of the things they say hurt. And you end up within 3 months saying, I don't like that person. I don't like the way they live their life. I don't like, their comments. I don't like the way they talk, blah, 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 blah. Where in actual fact, over those last 3 months, all you've really been doing was looking at the mirror of your own wounds. You don't know that person. So everything they say reflects back to an emotional wound that you might have. And that's what causes you not to like them. This can happen in the same way, in a positive way. You meet a person that everything that they say reminds you of the joy and love in your life. And it's exactly the same thing. You still don't know that person, but you decide you like them because they make you remember nice things. Their mirror is a good mirror. Someone else is projecting a bad mirror to you, things you don't want to look at.
But if you were, let me ask a question about that, because that I
Mm-hmm.
think fantastic example, and I'm thanks for doing the negative and positive. But would, if you are healed, could you get to a point where you're neutral about that? You know, I'm thinking of someone that I feel is a taker. And so like how I am with people, like I give everyone an opportunity and if they show me who they are, like again, it's no judgment. It's being like, okay, that person takes and that's fine, but I don't want that in my life. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't from a, oh my God, they're a taker and a judgment. It was from like, okay, this is how they are. Is that making sense?
Yes. And a lot of that is a projection on your feelings about taking.
Okay.
What we have to do is we have to take all of those things and bring them back to ourselves. It's really not about them.
Yes.
What we feel is not about them. It's always about us.
Right.
So what you're seeing is a mirror of a taker, and that's going into you on, for instance, me, I would turn around and I would welcome that because I have other issues that need me to be near people that are takers because I love giving so much.
Well, I have a whole slew of people for
And
you
it's not
then.
so much love giving, I'm not saying this is a function. This could be a dysfunction. For instance, people that take all the time give the givers an opportunity to give.
Right, but then I guess I would argue for balance. I don't think
You would
it's
argue
healthy
for
to
balance. Yes.
I don't think it's healthy to give all the time.
No, it's not. But we are responsible for our own give and take. We're not,
Absolutely.
we're not, we have to provide that to ourselves, the give and take. It doesn't come from others. It has to do with how much you give yourself and how much you take from yourself, on how deficient or efficient you'll feel. Nothing to do with the other person.
But that's still you are allowed to say no.
You're allowed to say no to anything.
Right.
What is going to happen is that if you're healed from that, it's not going to drag you down and it's not going to draw your energy by saying no.
Right, that's what I'm saying, like trying to articulate about being
It's not
neutral.
going to
Like you can
it's
say,
not going to
"Hey,
take you
thanks,
through that
no,"
journey
but
again.
yes, exactly. Thank you. Much better said than I ever
There you
could.
go. It won't take you through that traumatic journey again if you're healed from that issue.
Yes.
And yes, it's your decision if you want that in your life, if you want that to be near you, and if you don't want that to be near you. But if you don't want that to be near you because they take all the time, then there's an issue within you. If it makes you angry in your judgment, if it makes you emotional in your judgment, then you're judging.
Got it. Hey, that's
Discernment
fantastic.
does not involve emotion.
Yes. Well said.
And I remember asking that question in the second year. Well, what's the difference between discernment and judgment? I wanted to know what the difference was. And I was on it was one of those email things where everybody responds to all. And
Uh-huh.
we were discussing it in our 5-person circle. And a comment came in saying, you won't feel emotional about it if you're just in discernment. Your emotions don't come into it. Your personal emotions don't come into it.
Yeah.
So it's objective. And someone said to me, well, there's no way I could never judge. I'm a teacher. I have to judge my students all the time. And I said, well, there's a big difference in that. That's not judgment. There's a process. That's assessment. That's discernment. You're not really judging these people. You're not saying, oh, I like that person because she reminds me of my aunt and I love my aunt. You're saying, I like that person because she has a wonderful imagination and she uses it well and knows how to articulate it, and she's shown that. She's demonstrated that.
Right. That's excellent. Thank you. That's a very, very well thought out and good example. I want to talk before we run out of time about gratitude because that's another huge theme. And like forgiveness, if we all had more gratitude and took a step in that direction, I think we'd live in a much better world. So talk about gratitude in any way you want about the book, whatever you want to share.
Gratitude, if you look at gratitude as a chemical, like H2O, and forgiveness as another chemical, you could say that gratitude creates a chemical reaction that decimates, no, not that decimates, that creates forgiveness. The minute you walk into a state of, when you are in a state of gratitude for something that you are, you neutralize the chemistry in your spiritual body. And by neutralizing those chemicals, you can bring forgiveness in. It's just like if you're very, very angry and you douse yourself with love, your anger will disappear because it cannot exist where love is. When your gratitude will bring you to a state of forgiveness because you're so happy to have or to be the person you are today that you forgive what happened because you know that you wouldn't be the person you were today had that not happened.
Yeah.
Um,
Just while you're looking up something, I think that that's so true. The biggest person I ever had to forgive who really harmed me, that was one of the things I was like, well, I wouldn't be who I was if that hadn't happened, and I wouldn't have as big of heart or compassion, perhaps, if that hadn't have happened. And that was a large part of it.
yeah, exactly. I mean, today I am so grateful for the 6 years of abuse I went through because I would never have moved towards spirit. I would have been living a careless life with no God in my life had that never not happened. I wouldn't have gone searching.
Mm-hmm.
If my life had been good, I wouldn't have been searching for something better. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I had it bookmarked and I must have lost it because I opened the book and it was not to the spot that I wanted it to be. I wanted to read a few lines between the conversation between Hannah and Jay when they first meet.
Oh, yeah, that would be really, I don't know if I have that.
I know, I
And because
know.
I just have pages turned down. I didn't, when things that I thought would be interesting to discuss. So,
I I found a little part here.
okay.
Hannah's talking to Margaret. Hannah and Margaret are having a chat, and basically they're talking about their lives. And and Margaret is particularly talking about um, her inability to understand how Hannah can forgive. Basically, Margaret started to speak again, but hesitated, wondering whether to say it or not. She didn't want to offend Hannah and wasn't sure if her question would offend her. What? Hannah asked. What do you want to ask? Well, you said your dad's at River Park. Well, I was there too, but I was in a different ward. And I'm just wondering what kind of crazy makes someone do what he did. And how did you forgive him? Because you don't seem too upset about, she blurted out. Hannah sat up and leaned forward toward Margaret, who was sitting in an old bentwood rocking chair. It creaked as she rocked. When Hannah came forward, She grabbed Margaret's hand and caught her eye. Mar, she said, you're right. I have forgiven him. There's so much still to tell you. We can't separate so soon, Margaret. Promise me that you'll stay at least till the end of the summer because you can't go so soon. She sat and held Mar's hand tight as she rocked back and forth. I feel that something life-changing will be happening here in this place, Margaret said, staring at Hannah's eyes. Her voice was low and soft and had a little bit of an accent to it. Hannah had never heard her like this. Suddenly, Margaret stood up, looked into the fireplace. Her voice sounded to Hannah like it was coming from somewhere else. And she said, I am that wrinkle in your shirt. I am that one who bothers you. You are my heart's home, and yours is home with me. You guide, I follow. I fall, you know how. Twin, you, that you be me and I be you. We move and jump, or we skip another hoop. Hannah said, you didn't answer my question, Mar. And so on and so on. And what is being said there is Margaret's looking for real reasons. Hannah doesn't have any real reasons for her because she's experienced it.
Right.
And when you experience something rather than tell something about or learn something and are able to just dictate it back, you don't always know the elements involved. And Margaret's looking for elements. Margaret's saying, well, he must have done something for you to forgive him. He must have said something to you to make you forgive him. And Margaret's saying, and Hannah's saying, no, I forgive him because of who I am. I forgive him because of who I am today. Not because of what he did or what I did, but because of what I am because of that.
Yeah.
That's simple.
And powerful.
And it leads you to the part where you do not have to confront the person that you want to forgive. It's within you. Forgiveness is about you and nobody else.
Yes.
And for anyone that thinks they've heard everything there is to a wolf song, you ain't heard nothing yet.
There you go. Awesome. Thank you. We have sound effects here at Nissan Communications and Reawaken Your Brilliance. So Lisa, this was amazing. Tell everyone your website and how they can get the book and anything else that you'd like to share.
Okay. First of all, here it is. Oh, you know what I look like. I was going to show a picture. You know what I look like. You can get copies of my book. Actually, you can reach links to purchase my book on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, Balboa Press, from my website. And my website is www.lisaosina.com, and that is LISAOSINA, no space.com. There's a video on the bottom of the homepage that you can watch. And there's lots of pictures from book signings and events on there too, as well as links to purchase a wolf song. It's available in hardcover, paperback, and ebook. And I will be presenting an hour of Shaman Theater between 6 and 7 on April 26th at the New Living Expo in San Mateo, California. And myself and a friend, and we will be presenting parts of a wolf song, dramatized.
Oh, fun.
At that time. I was invited to do a lecture about forgiveness through gratitude. And every time I started writing the lecture, I fell asleep. And I said, that for me means I need to change it up and do something different. And I closed my eyes and said, wolves, what should I do with this hour? And I saw myself and my friend Maria on stage acting out a wolf song. And I called Maria and said, "You want to do it?" And she said, "Yes."
Excellent. All right, so that's lisaosina.com. We thank you for your time and want to thank everyone for watching. And next week, we're going to have our second annual contest winner who won an interview on Reawaken Your Brilliance. And we will plan on seeing all of you here back here next week. All right, everyone, get out there, live your lives, share your gifts, smile, and reawaken your brilliance. Bye now.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, and if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals. That VidBlasterGuy.com, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.